We're going to take an extremely in-depth view into the stereo random filter. Right now I have it on what I consider to be the initialized settings, and I'll go ahead and explain what each setting does. Before I do, let me just show you that I have noise coming out of the MS-20 to feed the stereo random filter so we can see exactly what it's doing. Here's that noise. See that it does taper off at the top end. It's just how the noise comes on the MS-20. So let me turn on this stereo random filter. See, we get a bandpass. Everything that I do in the stereo random filter, I'm going to replicate with the MS-20. I'll go ahead and replicate that now. I'll turn off timbre 2, turn on timbre 1, jump over to timbre 1, and create a bandpass filter with noise. So in the patch panel, I have noise, of course, going into a high pass and a low pass filter in series. And while it's in series, we can then play that noise and high pass it and low pass it. Of course, to create a bandpass. And I believe I forgot to turn off that's why it looks so steep. The high pass and low pass are different on the MS-20. We have a 1-pole high pass filter, or 6 dB per octave, and a 2-pole low pass filter. You can see that the low slope is less inclined than the higher one. Now the stereo random filter, its slope is somewhere between 6 and 12 dB. I actually couldn't replicate this filter with the filters in Mod 7 or the MS-20. So let's move on to the manual control. The manual control, let me switch back to my noise. The manual control controls the center frequency of the bandpass filter. So let's sweep that. Easy enough to understand. Now, you can see that we created a bandpass filter by using a low pass and a high pass in series. This thing has a trick where you can create a band reject filter. The way it does that is it creates a negative version, or a negative output, a phase flipped output of the bandpass filter. So when you have wet on negative, it just means a phase flipped output. And when summed with the original input, if you still have some of the dry input signal, it cancels at that bandpass frequency, thus becoming a band reject filter. Let's see what that looks like in the spectrum analyzer. Now, if we wanted to create a band reject filter in the MS-20, what we would have to do is go, actually let me switch my MS-20s. We would have to go into the patch panel, and let's patch noise into a mixer. That'll be our, oh, sorry, let me just disconnect these. I want to create a notch filter by having the filter set up in parallel. So the way to do that is I'll take noise, put that into the high pass filter, and take the high pass filter out, put that in a mixer. And then I also want noise going into the input of the low pass filter, and then I'll take the low pass filter output and put that into a mixer, take that output, and put that into the VCA. But then I need to actually fashion my my band reject filter. And the way to do that, of course, would be to have the high pass higher than the low pass. So I'll put this on 7. I'll have my low pass on 6. Let's look at that through the spectrum analyzer. But that's not what the stereo random filter is doing. It's creating a band reject filter. This could be considered a notch filter. Now, they're ostensibly the same, but we can actually create a band reject filter that is a phase canceled band in the MS-20 as well. So let's do that. I'll disconnect everything. And I'll take my noise and put it into my signal in, going in. We're just going to create the regular bandpass filter, so it's going to the filters in series instead of in parallel. And I'll take the output of that, patch it in here. Then I'll also take the noise and patch it in here. And we'll have that summed output go here. So what I'm doing is I have the plain white noise. This is going to act as our dry signal going into this input. Then I have what is our band pass filter going into this input. And then I have, this is our mixer 1. I have the dry signal at plus and our wet signal at negative 3.54 in this case. So it's very similar to the way we have this set up in that we have some dry signal and then negative wet signal. I might sneeze. So, let's listen to what we've created now with our band reject filter. And let me actually pop over to, let's see, to my play tab. Yes, I am using the right EXI. And let me pop over and let's just put our resonance up so we can really, really see what it looks like. Let's put it up to about 250. There we are. So we're now creating a phase canceling band with the MS-20 as well. So we're doing the exact same thing we are with the stereo random filter. Now there's something with the stereo random filter that's worth looking at. I'm going to go back into my play tab, switch to my just regular noise without any filtering. Go back in here, put this on. We have our band reject filter. Now let me actually turn up the resonance of the band reject filter. And then look at that through a spectrum analyzer. We see a peak. Now that was confusing to me at first because I was like, why is there a peak when we're phase canceling? And the answer is pretty simple. To illustrate what's going on, I have two tracks here. One is noise that's being fed into an effects channel. The effects channel is phase flipped, so it's creating a total cancellation. We're not hearing anything. If I unphase flip it, we hear noise. But if we boost the volume of the phase flip track, we of course hear noise. So what's happening there is we're boosting the volume of the resonance so high that it's canceling out the rejection and it's just creating a peak, a bandpass peak, in fact. So that is just to clear up any confusion about that. Let's move on to the LFO. So I'm going to go ahead and put this all the way down. And I'll put our resonance back at like 50. Let me put the depth up all the way. So now we have this random LFO affecting the position of, when I put this on wet, of the bandpass filter. Let's hear what that sounds like. And it doesn't sound like anything because why? Wet, random, let's put our, oh, because I don't have any clock. Sorry. In my global mode, I need to go to my MIDI and have my clock on internal. I had it on external. Sorry about that. So I can go ahead and put that manual back down. And if it didn't, since it didn't have any clock, and this is synced to MIDI, it didn't know basically when to go. So now when I press a button, so it's just a regular sample and hold kind of sound. You've heard this a million times. And I guess for the sake of review, let's go ahead and make a sample and hold sound in the MS-20 as well. I have to switch timbres. Go to this one, go to my patch panel. We're still in band reject mode. I'll go ahead and just disconnect all. We'll put my white noise back into the signal in, and that's It's going to the filters. Let me double check my filters. Let me put this on 6-ish. And I'll put the other one on like 650. So here we have our bandpass. But then I want to create a sample and hold to move the bandpass filter around. I'll go into the patch panel, grab some pink noise, throw it into this sample and hold input, grab the modulation generator, put that into the clock source, and then put that modulation output into the cutoff input. Let's give that a listen. And do I need to fashion anything else? Yes, I need to turn up the intensity. So now we need to just put these, I like it at like 5, just halfway. It seems to have more finite control if I adjust it this way. Again, it's just a sample and hold. So in the, let's compare the two sounds. Here's this sample and hold versus this sample and hold. So this is akin to just like pink noise going into a sample and hold circuit. But we can choose a different waveform. We can choose this. Oh, wait, before I move on to that, let me just show you what phase does. So with phase, we can offset the degree. And I can throw this into stereo. So we're looking at the left and right channel. And then I can go ahead and offset those channels. This is kind of like creating a random offset or the degree of offset between them. I think I just said that, but it'll become more apparent when I just play it. So at only at a phase plus 20 difference, you can see them getting kind of disaligned with each other. By the way, it's only the right channel that this is affecting. The left channel will sound the same no matter what. And then if I boost this all the way up to 180, they'll actually be outputting opposite values from each other. So let's say that it's modulating the depth or the position plus 40% on the left side. It'll then be doing minus 40% for that particular hold value on the right side. So let's put that back down to normal. Now let's switch over to the step tri. So with the step triangle waveform, you have the frequency. I have this synced to MIDI for illustrative purposes. You can have the frequency, you have the frequency of the triangle wave that you set here. That is, it goes through one cycle based on a whole note at 120 BPM. And then you have the step note. This is every time it basically samples the voltage of that triangle waveform. And I have that at eighth notes. So let's hear what that sounds like. So if I want to mimic that on the MS-20, I have to go into my patch panel, and instead of feeding it noise, which is like if we had a random waveform on the stereo filter, let me disconnect this, and instead I'll feed it a triangle waveform, triangle wave LFO. And then I'm just using LFO1 for this. I have that chosen as the source. I have full volume. And if I go into LFO1, see I have key sync on and MIDI sync on. And again, I'm using a whole note. And again, our modulation generator is also key sync, tempo synced, and is sampling. That is in the patch panel. It's telling the clock to sample every eighth note interval. So that's what this sounds like. Now, I remember being thrown for a loop because it sounded like they were different. I think if I counted the amount of steps that I could hear, it sounded different between the MS-20 and the stereo random filter. I'm going to count them real fast. 1, 2, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that actually behaves exactly how it's expected to. I hear 8 different steps in there. But if we go and listen to the stereo random filter, I believe I hear about like 6 or 7 steps. Let's listen to that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we hear about 6 steps, and I was like, I didn't understand that. I was like, why are we only hearing 6 steps? So I made a little graph, and here we have our triangle waveform, both of them, and in the MS-20, it's sampling every 8th notes per quarter note. So it's like dividing this into 8 slices. You see we have 1 slice, 2 slice, 3 slice, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so each one of those, it's sampling basically the amplitude of the triangle wave at each one of those intervals. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 before it goes back to 1. Now in this one, it actually has a 45-degree offset. And so that's why we hear longer notes, because the sampling starts at kind of like an offset. So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before it gets back to the original note, the original value. And you could hear the length is long at the top and at the bottom. So we do have a parameter on there that will offset the right channel by 45 degrees. Actually, we can't get 45 degrees, but if we round up, it would be 50. And in this case, we would hear 8 discrete steps instead of 6. So if you just listen to your right channel, you'll hear what I'm talking about. Since the left channel is unaffected, we'll still hear the 6 steps with those 2 elongated steps on the left channel. But then on the right channel, we'll get 8. And by the way, that's the same whether we're doing plus and I believe minus 50. I actually haven't checked this out. Yep. So we're just offsetting the phase either one way or the other. Now, the last thing that I want to show you is that in the MS-20, we don't have to use a sample and hold triangle wave. We actually have a different way that we can do things. Let's go ahead and go back to our modulating MS-20, go to the patch panel. Now I'm just going to take the output of AMS Mixer 1, throw that into the input of our filters to change the cutoff frequency. And then let me go to that AMS Mixer. Now I have LFO1 being divided into 2 steps with the quantize AMS Mixer. And now let's listen to what that sounds like. And I think I forgot to turn off this. Yep. Now let's hear what this sounds like. So we are hearing 8 discrete steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is we're back at 1. 6, 7, 8, 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. So I was wrong. It's not 8 isn't back at 1. It goes through 8 whole steps and then back resets back to 1. So the way this is dividing up the signal is a bit different. And I didn't make a graph for this, and I'm not going to, because I think in the future I'll just have to go over the AMS Mixer in depth on its own. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything there is to know about the stereo random filter and all its strange tricks. It's got band reject mode, so basically I would always only use this in 50 minus 50% wet, 50 dry, or just all the way positive wet. So use it in that mode, and then yeah, you got your step triangle, which has a strange offset in the filters. You could of course don't have to use MIDI tempo sync. You have your manual control, your depth. There's a lot to this thing. Oh, and most importantly, the curve is different from any other filter in the Kronos. So yeah, that's I mean, this is like the ultimate breakdown of this plugin. So hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully this was semi-interesting. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.